Welcome back to Cooking with Bill. It's been a bit of while since we've been together, but I thought we'd do something I've done traditionally for the last 20 years, and that's bake some biscotti. Now, I've been doing this for friends and family, making different varieties. The traditional biscotti that you would get that would come out of Italy would be a very dense cookie, and since biscotti basically means twice baked, you take a cookie, you cut it into a bar, you lay it on its side and bake it again. Now, some people don't like that crunchiness, but for me, I like something to dip into a cup of coffee or into a tea, and so biscotti is a real nice biscuit that you can do, and it's a cookie flavor. Now, the primary difference between a biscotti and a cookie, other than the double baking, is that we don't use butter in a biscotti mix. We use that in a cookie dough. So there's no oil, there's no butter in biscotti, at least in the recipe I'm using. Very simple recipe. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use some eggs, flour, we're going to use baking soda. We have a little pinch of salt like you do with everything. We're going to put a little bit of extract of anise, which is the black licorice flavor. If you don't like it, leave it out. And I'm putting a little bit of almond extract in as well. As far as the flour, we're using just an all-purpose flour, and we're going to use some ground almonds. Now you could do slivered almonds, you could do chopped almonds, whatever you like to do, but about 4 ounces or so in this particular batter. Now we're going to put it in a standard stand mixer. You could do this just in a bowl. Real simple to do. So to start out, we have about 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I've got about 4 to 5 ounces of almonds, and all we're going to do is put that in here. Make it be like a white Christmas because it all puffs up and gets into your face. We're going to add 2 cups of just all-purpose sugar. We're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And don't forget the salt. Okay, you're going to need that. We're going to bring the mixer up, kind of incorporate that together, just to make sure you don't have any pockets of one thing or another. Once you've done that, it's pretty simple from this point on. We're going to use between 3 and 4 eggs in this batter, depending on how big your eggs are. You should have them at room temperature, but again, if you forget that, don't worry about it. I wanted to show you something that's kind of interesting though. Now, if you have too many eggs, like I did at one point, you can freeze your eggs. So, what you do is you take your eggs and you put them into a muffin pan, and you actually freeze each individual egg in the muffin pan. You can put just a touch of salt or a touch of sugar into the egg. You're not stirring it up, but it'll help protect that yolk from getting a real cloudy look to it. And then when you're ready for them, you just bring them out, let them thaw, and you're ready to cook. Now what I do is I take them out of the muffin pans, I replace them, put them into a freezer bag, and then they're good frozen for months. Okay? If you want to, at that point before you freeze them, you could separate out the yolks from the whites. So you would have all whites in one area and all yolks in another. So if you wanted them for different purposes, you could do that as well. So just remember, if you overbuy your eggs like I did, you can freeze them and reuse them this way, and they're not going to go bad. They're going to be just fine. Now, we're talking about the eggs. Eggs, it doesn't matter whether they're brown or whether they're white. It doesn't matter whether they're pasteurized or not. We're going to take and do about 3 eggs and see how the batter looks. So you're just opening up your eggs. I typically do this into a bowl. This way you can tell if you've broken any eggs. You don't want any of the shells to be in the egg as well. You can whisk these if you want. Now at this point I'm going to add in my anise or anise, putting in a good tablespoon of this. Now if you have problems finding it, you can actually make your own. You can go get star of anise at an Asian market or in the Asian part of your aisle at your food store, and then just put it into some vodka or some type of drinkable alcohol. You want it to be clear, of course, and let it sit there and soak for months. It'll just leach out that star of anise flavor into that alcohol put it in a closable bottle and you can reuse it. You can do the same thing with vanilla. You can do the same thing with a lot of your spices if you want to extract that out and not pay $7, $8 for a tiny bottle of it. Okay? I'm going to take a little bit of my almond extract, add that in as well, because these are an almond cookie. And now we're going to mix it in. Do this one egg at a time, make sure it's incorporating. Now we're going to let this stir a little bit. If it seems a bit too dry, I'll add one more egg, but just pay attention to your dough. Now, once you've done this and you've incorporated all this together, you're going to take this off. If it's a little bit too wet, because of miscalculation, you can always take and add just a little more flour or a little more almond. Okay, so once you've incorporated all this, what I typically will do is I'll put a little bit of water on my hands. That'll help keep the batter from sticking to your hands. You can then scrape it out of the bowl. And this is going to make approximately 4 logs. We'll see. Depends on how big your logs are. So we're going to take this out. And as you can see, nice dough. Give it a little bit of a roll. Again, if it starts sticking on your hands too much, just put a little water on your hands and that'll make this be just fine. Now this will spread when it's cooking. So even though these logs look very narrow, they will become quite big once they are allowed to get set up. So I typically will get them anywhere up to about 6, 8, 10 inches long, depending on how big you want your logs to be. Now some people make these very big. Some people make these 5, 6 inches wide. It's all what you like. I like to have smaller biscottis. So if you end up having those really wide biscottis, you'll end up having to cut them in half. So I just make a narrower version of it. You're going to set the oven on 350 degrees. We'll put them in there. We may turn them halfway through. We're going to pull them out and see how they look. Okay, the biscotti is now cooled. Might be just a little bit warm, but we're not worried about that. We're going to take and we're going to cut this at an angle. And we're going to use a bread knife. So it has that serrated edge. We're going to take about 3/4 of an inch. Now again, if you make these fatter, they'll be a much thicker biscotti. And what we'll do is we'll take these, put them back onto a sheet pan, and we're going to turn them cut side down and let them bake for about another 20 minutes. So when we come back, I'll show you what they look like, and then we'll dredge them in dark chocolate, and you'll get to see what that traditional biscotti looks like. Okay, the final part to doing these Annis traditional biscotti, in my opinion, is putting a dark chocolate dredge over top of them. Now to do that, I use dark chocolate bits as well as I use milk chocolate, about 2/3 dark to 1/3 milk. Put them in a bowl. I put them in the microwave for about a minute at high. Stir them around a little bit, let them set for a few seconds. Put it back in for about another 30 and stir it. Now, what you're trying not to do, you don't want the chocolate to seize up or just become hard again. If that happens, you can add a little bit of oil to the cocoa and it'll actually make it come back to a usable consistency. But if you've done this correctly, you should have a nice flowing chocolate. And what we've done is we've taken the biscotti, put it bottom side up, and we're going to dredge the bottoms of these cookies. Now you can be fancy. You can just take a spatula and put them across, make them completely solid. It all depends on how much work you want to put into them. I like to get a decent amount of chocolate on them because it does add a nice rich flavor to it. But again, if you don't feel like doing it fancy, you can just sit there and take your spatula, rub it straight across, just like that. And that'll work as well. Again, once this chocolate solidifies, it's not going to matter. You don't have to cover the entire bottom. You can cover as much as you'd like. If you like a lot of chocolate, by all means. And then when you're done with this, just let them cool. That chocolate will become hard again. And then you can put them on a plate, put them in boxes. I give them away as gifts. And there you go. You're going to have yourself a wonderful holiday tradition if you want to have a traditional Italian biscotti or biscotti. I know people can buy these in the store, but I think just like with everything, if it's made at home, people have a better opinion of the time and love that went into actually cooking. I think that's the only reason a lot of people watch these shows, is that they want to learn to do something that they might not be able to just go out and buy and make it better, put their spin on it. So, I hope you've enjoyed watching Cooking with Bill. This is our biscotti program, and we've done 3 different kinds of biscotti. We've done a chocolate dredged traditional almond and anise or anise black licorice flavored. We have done a death by chocolate, and we're going to dredge that in a white and dark chocolate on the bottom. And then we also did a ginger craisin, and that was using that crystalline ginger and craisins. And we're going to do the bottom with a white chocolate that has ginger powder mixed in as its dredge. So if you like this, please let us know on Facebook, on YouTube. You can subscribe, you can leave comments, let me know what you think if you have other ideas. But as always, happy holidays, and we'll see you back here in the kitchen.